75 years old, 75 professional fights. For Larry Holmes, the Easton Assassin, it's more than a number. It's a legacy written in blood and bruises. He outboxed legends like Ali, Tyson, and Holyfield. But now, as Holmes marks his greatest milestone, he finally reveals the truth about the one opponent who pushed him further than Iron Mike ever could. Who was this forgotten fighter? And why reveal him now? Larry Holmes, born on November 3, 1949, recently celebrated his 75th birthday. A significant age for any individual, but particularly touching for a man whose professional boxing career spanned an astonishing 75 fights. From his debut in 1973 to his final bout in 2002, Holmes compiled an impressive record of 69 wins against only 6 losses, securing 44 of those victories by knockout. His reign as the undisputed heavyweight champion from June 1978 to September 1985 cemented his place as one of the sport's all-time greats. This remarkable longevity and consistent performance across decades show his legendary status, making his reflections on his career particularly weighty. Despite a career filled with formidable opponents and iconic victories, a surprising statement from Holmes has often challenged conventional wisdom among boxing enthusiasts. The former heavyweight king has asserted that Mike Tyson, the explosive force who delivered Holmes's only career knockout, was not, in fact, the toughest fighter he ever encountered. This declaration runs contrary to public perception, which often fixates on the dramatic and conclusive nature of a knockout loss. For many, the image of a defeated Holmes at the hands of Iron Mike remains the defining moment of his most challenging encounter. However, a fighter's assessment of toughest extends far beyond a single devastating punch or a quick finish. It encompasses the sustained physical and mental toll of a prolonged struggle, the strategic complexities, and the sheer resilience demanded over many rounds. But before we dive into the fight that changed everything, let's rewind. To truly understand Larry Holmes and what made him the fighter he was, we have to start at the beginning. From poverty to prize fighter, the making of Larry Holmes. Larry Holmes's journey to boxing stardom began far from the glamorous lights of Las Vegas. Born in Cuthbert, Georgia, in 1949, he was the fourth of 12 children in a family that struggled profoundly with financial hardship. His early years were marked by reliance on welfare, and a move to Easton, Pennsylvania, in 1956, when he was 5, brought little immediate relief from poverty. Holmes vividly recalled the deep humiliation of seeking clothes from the Salvation Army and accompanying his mother to the welfare office, experiences that undoubtedly shaped his fierce drive and determination. His father worked as a gardener in Connecticut, visiting every few weeks, but as his mother, Flossie, once put it, "He didn't forsake us. He just didn't have anything to give." Faced with the stark realities of his family's situation, Holmes dropped out of school in the 7th grade to contribute to their meager income. He took on various low-paying jobs, from washing cars for $1 an hour to driving a dump truck and working in a Lehigh Valley quarry. Beyond the structured work, his youth was also characterized by frequent street fights, where he developed a reputation as a formidable street fighter who didn't take nothing from nobody. This raw, untamed aggression eventually found a more constructive outlet through the Easton Police Athletic League, where he began to channel his anger and learn the fundamentals of boxing. Holmes entered the world of amateur boxing at the relatively late age of 18, a time when many future champions were already well into their development. Despite his late start, he amassed a respectable amateur record of 19 wins and 3 losses. His aspirations to join the 1972 U.S. Olympic boxing team were thwarted, first by a loss to Nick Wells in the semifinals of the Olympic trials, and then by a disqualification for holding against Dwayne Bobbick in the box-offs. These early setbacks, however, did not deter him. He turned professional on March 21, 1973, winning his debut bout for a mere $63, a testament to the humble beginnings of what would become a monumental career. The period immediately following his professional debut proved to be a crucible for Holmes. From 1973 to 1975, he served as a sparring partner for some of the most iconic heavyweights of the era: Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, and Ernie Shavers. This was not a glamorous role, but it was an invaluable apprenticeship. Ali, his former mentor, paid him $500 a week, even on days he didn't work, providing a crucial source of income and a unique learning environment. Holmes often remarked that he held his own against these champions, a realization that solidified his belief in his own potential. The sparring sessions were brutal. Joe Frazier reportedly broke one of Holmes's ribs, and Ali once swelled his eye shut. Yet Holmes famously refused medical treatment, eager to prove his toughness and absorb every lesson from these legendary figures. Larry Holmes grew up in tough conditions: poverty, street life, and a constant fight to survive. But those struggles shaped him. They built his unmatched work ethic, his toughness, and a deep hunger for success and respect. For Holmes, boxing wasn't just a sport, it was his way out, his shot at a better life. Those early battles didn't just toughen Holmes up, they taught him how to fight smart. Every bruise, every busted rib, every swollen eye shaped a boxer who didn't just hit hard, he hit with precision. And when it was finally his turn to step into the spotlight, Holmes didn't waste it. He took the lessons of those brutal sparring sessions and turned them into one of the most effective weapons in heavyweight history: the jab. After turning professional in 1973, Larry Holmes embarked on a steady ascent through the heavyweight ranks. He often appeared on the undercards of major bouts, including those featuring Muhammad Ali, gradually building his record and honing his craft. Despite his undeniable skills, Holmes initially struggled to gain widespread recognition and secure the larger purses that his talent warranted. Some within the boxing world even harbored doubts, believing he avoided truly tough opponents and lacked the heart and desire characteristic of a true champion. This early skepticism, however, would be dramatically disproven as his career progressed. Holmes became renowned for possessing one of the greatest left jabs in boxing history. This formidable weapon was meticulously perfected during his rigorous training and extensive sparring sessions with legends like Ali and Frazier. His fighting style was a masterclass in efficiency, characterized by precise distance control and pinpoint accuracy. He utilized his jab not only to gauge range and set up his powerful right hand, but also as a primary defensive tool, keeping opponents at bay and disrupting their rhythm. Holmes often fought at long range, expertly employing his jab to maintain separation, and demonstrated excellent side-to-side movement, making him a difficult target to pin down. This mastery of the jab and his disciplined approach propelled him to the pinnacle of the heavyweight division. On June 9, 1978, Holmes captured the WBC heavyweight title by defeating Ken Norton in a grueling split decision. This victory marked the beginning of an extraordinary reign that would last over 7 years, during which he successfully defended his title 20 times. Such sustained dominance firmly established his legacy as one of the sport's all-time great heavyweights. During his time as champion, Larry Holmes went up against some of the toughest fighters in boxing history, each one pushing him in different ways. One of the most dangerous was Ernie Shavers, known for his terrifying punching power. Holmes beat him in a hard-fought match in 1978 before winning the title. Years later, Holmes would still say that Shavers hit harder than anyone he ever faced, even harder than Mike Tyson. He once said being hit by Shavers felt like lightning struck, describing the punch that nearly knocked him out as the one that woke him up. But no punch ever hurt quite like the next fight, emotionally at least. Holmes found himself facing Muhammad Ali, the man he had once trained under, admired, and respected like a brother. In 1980, they met in the ring, but by then, Ali was clearly past his prime. Holmes dominated the fight from start to finish. It ended in the 10th round when Ali's corner threw in the towel. Despite the victory, Holmes admitted he cried afterward. Beating Ali wasn't a moment of triumph, it was one of heartbreak. In 1982, Holmes faced Jerry Cooney, a match surrounded by racial tension. Cooney was promoted as the Great White Hope, a label that brought out the worst in some fans, including death threats aimed at Holmes. But Holmes stayed focused and won the fight in the 13th round, earning the biggest paycheck of his career, $10 million. Holmes's undefeated streak finally ended in 1985 when he lost a close decision to Michael Spinks. It was the first loss of his professional career and the end of a 7-year reign as champion. A rematch the next year also ended in a decision that didn't go Holmes's way, sparking more debate. Despite everything Holmes achieved, holding the title for over 7 years, defending it 20 times, and boasting one of the sharpest jabs in boxing, he often didn't get the respect he deserved. Tennis legend Arthur Ashe once called him the most underrated and underpublicized heavyweight champion in history. Part of the reason may have been Holmes's quiet nature and technical style, which didn't always light up the crowd. Add in the racial issues that surrounded certain fights, and it's clear that public perception played a big role in how his legacy was shaped. The Ghost of Iron Mike, a fight misunderstood. The boxing world held its breath on January 22, 1988, as Larry Holmes stepped back into the ring to face Mike Tyson at the Convention Center in Atlantic City, New Jersey. This was a clash of generations and legacies. Tyson, at a mere 21 years old, was in the ferocious prime of his career, holding the WBA, WBC, and IBF heavyweight titles, and widely considered the most intimidating force in boxing. Holmes, by contrast, was 38 years old, a full 17 years Tyson's senior, and had been out of professional competition for 21 months, having announced his retirement after his second loss to Michael Spinks in 1986. The betting odds reflected this stark contrast, with Tyson entering the bout as an overwhelming 8-1 favorite. Holmes's decision to return from retirement was driven by a powerful combination of financial incentive and a champion's pride. After his initial retirement following the Spinks losses, he was lured back by a substantial purse, estimated at $3 million. The allure of potentially regaining the World Heavyweight Championship, a title he felt was stolen from him, also played a significant role in his comeback. This blend of economic opportunity and a deep-seated desire to reclaim his status propelled him to face the formidable, younger champion, even if his physical readiness was not at its peak. Mike Tyson, nicknamed Iron Mike and Kid Dynamite, was an unstoppable force at this time. He had won his first 19 professional fights by knockout, 12 of them in the first round, and boasted an astonishing 88% knockout-to-win percentage. His aggressive, intimidating style was designed to overwhelm opponents quickly. In their fight, Holmes initially attempted to counter Tyson's relentless charges with defensive tactics, clinching frequently and moving to avoid damage. In the third round, He even showed flashes of his prime, utilizing his renowned jab and footwork, drawing a cheer from the crowd. However, Tyson's raw power and unyielding aggression ultimately proved too much for the older, less conditioned Holmes. In the fourth round, Tyson unleashed a furious assault, knocking Holmes down 3 times. The final blow, a devastating right hook, sent Holmes to the canvas for the 3rd time, prompting referee Joe Cortez to stop the fight with just 7 seconds remaining in the round. This knockout marked the only time Larry Holmes was stopped in his entire 75-fight professional career. For Holmes, the fight's outcome was less about Tyson's inherent superiority and more about the timing of their encounter. He candidly admitted, "I fought Mike Tyson. I was kinda over the hill a little bit. I had retired, then I came back and fight Mike Tyson. I really wasn't in that good of shape." He expressed regret, stating, "If I could do it all over again, I'd take more time and do it right." While acknowledging Tyson's immense power, he said, "Mike knocked the hell out of me. He hit me so hard I went, woo, and he beat me. It was embarrassing." Holmes consistently emphasized that his physical condition, rather than Tyson's skill alone, was the decisive factor in his defeat. Holmes, at 38, was well past his prime and had been inactive, while Tyson, at 21, was at the peak of his destructive powers. The outcome was a definitive loss for Holmes. But as brutal as the Tyson fight was, it wasn't the one that truly pushed Holmes to his limit. That came years earlier against a fighter who matched him not just in skill, but in sheer grit and determination. The toughest fight: Larry Holmes versus Ken Norton. The true test of Larry Holmes' career, the fight he consistently identifies as his toughest, unfolded on June 9, 1978, at Caesars Palace in Paradise, Nevada. This was a pivotal moment in heavyweight boxing, a clash for the WBC heavyweight title between the reigning champion, Ken Norton, and the undefeated challenger, Larry Holmes. Norton, at 34, held the WBC title, though his acquisition of it was controversial. He had been awarded the belt after Leon Spinks, who had upset Muhammad Ali, opted for a more lucrative rematch with Ali rather than facing Norton, his mandatory challenger. Holmes, at 28, was 6 years Norton's junior and entered the fight with a pristine 27-0 professional record. Despite Holmes's undefeated streak, Norton was a slight 6-5 favorite, and the fight was a major event, broadcast live on ABC to an estimated 40 million viewers. Leading up to the bout, a genuine animosity simmered between the two fighters, adding a compelling layer of personal drama to the high stakes. Norton's perceived arrogance reportedly irritated Holmes, culminating in a shoving match at a pre-fight publicity event, where Holmes taunted Norton, who in turn dismissed Holmes as a pinhead. Even during the referee's instructions in the ring, Holmes attempted to intimidate Norton with an angry glare, which Norton pointedly ignored. Holmes publicly declared his confidence, stating, "Norton is too old. I will outbox him. I'm not a devastating puncher, but the fight will not go 15 rounds." This pre-fight tension set the stage for a deeply personal and physically punishing encounter. From the opening bell, Holmes came out fast, working his sharp left jab to control the tempo and keep Norton at bay. He looked composed and calculated, using his reach and footwork to win most of the early exchanges. Norton, with his unconventional turtle defense, struggled to find his rhythm. His punches were often off the mark, and Holmes seemed comfortably in control, building an early lead with precision and poise. But by the 6th round, the tide began to shift. Urged on by his corner, Norton threw caution aside and started to press forward with unrelenting aggression. He began landing with authority: left hooks, looping rights, heavy body shots, and Holmes, clearly tiring, found himself on the defensive. A cut inside his lip, signs of fatigue, and warnings for excessive holding all pointed to the growing pressure Norton was applying. The fight turned into a slugfest, a battle less about skill and more about who could endure the most. Despite the wear and tear, Holmes refused to back down. With a torn left bicep, an injury he picked up just days before the fight, Holmes pushed through the pain as the championship rounds drew near. In the 13th round, he seemed to find something extra. His jab regained its sting, and he stunned Norton with a series of right hands that nearly shifted the course of the fight. But Norton, equally driven, answered with fire of his own in the following round, trapping Holmes against the ropes and unloading with punishing combinations that left the crowd on edge. By the time the final bell rang, neither man had clearly pulled away. It was a war, fought on even ground, and the scorecards reflected just how razor-thin the margin had become. The 15th round of the Holmes-Norton fight is etched into boxing lore as one of the most exhilarating and brutal finales in heavyweight history. Both men were completely exhausted, but knowing the championship was on the line, they gave it everything they had left. It was a brutal, toe-to-toe battle that had fans on the edge of their seats. The outcome was a razor-thin split decision in favor of Larry Holmes. Two judges scored it 143 to 142 for Holmes, while the third gave it to Norton by the same margin. It was a dead-even war that cemented the bout as an all-time classic. Holmes has consistently named Ken Norton as the opponent who truly tested his limits. "My toughest opponent was Kenny Norton. I fought Mike Tyson. I was kinda over the hill a little bit," he said. This is where things get real. Because what excites the audience isn't always what tests the man in the ring. There's a world of difference between what fans remember and what the fighter actually survives. Kenneth Howard Norton, born on August 9, 1943, in Jacksonville, Illinois, was a formidable athlete long before he stepped into a boxing ring. He burst onto the national boxing scene in 1973 with a shocking victory over Muhammad Ali, a fight in which he famously broke Ali's jaw. Entering the bout as a significant 7-1 underdog, this win immediately cemented his status as a top contender and earned him the indelible nickname, the Jawbreaker. This pivotal moment established Norton as a fighter who could not only compete with, but defeat the very best. Norton's fighting style was as unique as it was effective. He was known for his unusual, awkward, cross-arm guard, where his left arm was held low across his torso and his right hand was positioned up by his ear. When under heavy pressure, both arms would come high across his face, creating a tight and unconventional defense. This distinctive approach, which Muhammad Ali's legendary trainer Angelo Dundee famously dubbed "Hop-along Cassidy boxing," often put opponents off-kilter and proved particularly troublesome for Ali himself, giving him more difficulty than almost any other fighter. Norton was primarily a forward-pressing fighter, at his best when advancing, and possessed well-placed heavy punches, including a powerful left hook and a deceptive overhand right. He would bob and weave from a crouch, cleverly disguising his overhand right to strike from a blind spot, adding an element of unpredictability to his attacks. For a jabbing fighter like Larry Holmes, who relied on rhythm and distance, Norton's unpredictable movements and unique defensive posture would constantly disrupt his timing, making it exceptionally difficult to land clean, effective punches. This awkwardness forced Holmes out of his comfort zone, compelling him to adapt and fight in a way that taxed him more than a straightforward slugger or a more conventional boxer. This explains why Norton, despite not being the hardest puncher, like Shavers, or the most explosive, like Tyson, was Holmes's most challenging opponent. He was a stylistic nightmare. A significant point of contention in Norton's career revolved around his WBC heavyweight title. He was awarded the championship in March 1978, not by winning it in the ring, but after Leon Spinks, who had recently upset Muhammad Ali, refused to fight Norton, the mandatory challenger, in favor of a more lucrative rematch with Ali. This led to some in the media deriding Norton as a paper champion. Norton, however, met this criticism with defiance. He famously responded, "How do I feel about being called the paper champion? Well, when you get down to it, it's all on paper anyhow. I said that if I ever became champion, I would fight all comers, and Larry Holmes is next up." I feel that Holmes is a better fighter than Leon Spinks. This public statement not only showcased his confidence, but also set the stage for his legitimizing bout against Holmes. The paper champion label, intended to diminish Norton, likely served as a powerful motivator. It became a catalyst for an extraordinary display of skill and heart, ultimately solidifying his legacy as a true warrior, regardless of how he initially acquired the belt. Ken Norton's career was defined by his grit and his uncanny ability to push the best heavyweights to their breaking point. While his legendary trilogy with Muhammad Ali remains his most famous feat, Norton also battled and often beat top contenders of his era, earning his place in what many call boxing's golden age. He retired in 1981 with a solid record of 42 wins, 7 losses, and 1 draw, and was rightly honored with induction into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1989. Like Norton, Larry Holmes emerged as a fighter defined not just by skill, but by sheer resilience. Now at 75, Holmes, the Easton Assassin, looks back on a career that spanned nearly 3 decades and 75 punishing fights. He wasn't just fighting opponents. He was constantly proving his place in a generation stacked with giants. His legacy isn't measured only by the wins, but by the battles that tested his will, sharpened his resolve, and cemented his standing as one of the sport's most technically gifted and mentally tough champions. In a time dominated by loud personalities and louder headlines, Holmes let his fists and his longevity do the talking. But has Larry Holmes finally received the respect his greatness deserves, or is he still one of the most overlooked champions of his era? Leave your answers in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.